So, I'm a British kid living in the Middle East, and the country that I live in, there is a lot of poverty. Expatriates like me are usually in the top 1%, along with people linked to like the royal family. Due to this poverty, there are several villages that are locals and migrants, workers, tend to live in. They're run down and usually covered in thick soot, as people usually burn tires and blow up gasoline canisters in protest of the royal family. Now, I can't give you my location, as I'd be thrown out of my country, and I'd rather stay here, to be honest, as it's a lot cheaper to live here instead of UK. And the private education is really good. But that's not the point. So, I decided on a Thursday night to go exploring in an abandoned village that was left in around 2012 due to the civil unrest. Big mistake. I stupidly thought that it would be okay to go alone, because despite protests, crime rates are low. But I did take a kitchen knife just to at least feel safe, a torch and a few cans of Coke, because food. I knew my parents would disapprove of my plan, so I told them that I was just walking to a friend's house. They lived about 5 minutes away, and set out at 8 p.m. When I got into this village, I instantly got chills, as I saw smashed windows and gas canisters that should have already blown up 5 years prior. Out of pure stupidity, I kicked one of the gas cans and scared the crap out of myself when it started to hiss. It was when I started exploring these houses that I was beginning to really feel and realize the severity of my mistake. As I forced the flimsy lock on a house door to find a smell that seemed to be rotting, it was disgusting. I couldn't take the smell, and I went to another house, and another, and another. They all had this awful smell. I hadn't found anything of interest, and didn't want to leave knowing I hadn't accomplished anything. So I covered my nose with a shirt to at least try to keep the smell away from me, and headed into one of the houses. When I checked the kitchen to see if there was a smell of like old food or something, there was nothing there. Nothing in the fridge or on the table. In the bathrooms there was just an old can of deodorant and some toilet paper. But as I headed upstairs, I found something that is forever burned in my mind. In each and every one of these rooms upstairs, there were at least 2 mummified corpses that had almost a yellow tinge from rot and decay. They had been there for a while. Then it struck me. Someone had used the fact that nobody had been here in over 5 years as their advantage. It was the perfect place to hide a body. The smell in all of these houses were bodies. I ran downstairs out of a mix of disgust and fear, but I tripped on the last stair, making a large thump noise. Then I heard a door open, and a tall man about 6'5" came crashing down the stairs. He chased me down the street and cornered me in a pitch black of night, just outside the gate of my house. I remembered my knife, pulling it out of my pocket and lunging at the man, just to scare him. But he retaliated and tried to grab me, as I bolted up onto the garden wall, and I ran inside. I locked every door, bolted every window, and waited out the night. I'm not going to explore again anytime soon. The area I'm going to talk about is located somewhere in the Alabama, Tennessee, or Georgia area. I can't fully recall all of the details because of the events that took place after my incident. A buddy of mine, whom I'll call Rick to protect his family, and I loved urban exploring and would take our vacation to random locations to just go and explore forgotten and abandoned locations, just for fun. For those unfamiliar with the urban exploring, or urbex, it's like caving, but you're actually going to a man-made location that were either hit by a disaster, locations that just went bankrupt, or whatever the case may be. I'll stick with Alabama for the sake of telling the story. Rick and I booked our first urbex trip for the year back in 2006. We were excited to get going since it had been the longest time we had waited before going to another adventure. When the date finally rolled around, we were both up and ready at 4 a.m. from excitement. Before we knew it, we were to our destination, only to be met with heartbreak. Apparently the information we had gotten from some of the local urbex forums was outdated, and the once abandoned iron casting foundry we were going to explore was littered with construction crews that were busy clearing the site. Almost like something that you would expect to see in a movie, because it was just the perfect, most inopportune time for us to arrive. We still got out and asked around, but it turned out that the crews had been going for almost a month on demoing the area to make way for a residential area to come in. Needless to say, my buddy and I were heartbroken and had tons of time on our hands, since this was expected to be a full week-long vacation. After much deliberation, we called and canceled our hotel at the last minute and decided to drive around the state in hopes to stumble upon some prime exploration area. We avoided the main roads and stuck mostly to the back roads while enjoying the mountainous views. It was on top of a winding road where we saw it. Down in the small valley area, below, was an abandoned power station. We made our way trying to find a road to get to this place, with no luck. Once we found a pull-off area, we decided to just park and hike our way in. We hiked a good 20 minutes before making it to the clearing where the area was located. The entire area was blocked off by a chain link fence. Rick first noticed that while the area inside of the fence looked abandoned for years. The fence itself looked brand new, with no entry signs everywhere and topped with barbed wire to keep people from climbing. We assumed it had just been recently blocked off to keep the kids from wandering in and getting hurt. We walked almost completely around the complex, another 45 minutes, until we stumbled upon the smallest opening beneath the fence that was similar to dogs digging under a fence. We passed through the fence and started exploring. We noticed the abundance of cameras, but thought nothing of it since we assumed that they were no longer functioning. We began to look around at all of these buildings and machines, but the strangest thing was, none of these buildings looked like they ever had anything in them, despite appearing like they were hundreds of years old on the outside. We ventured into the tunnel, and we had found what looked like would be promising. Inside the tunnel were probably dozens of doors and different hallways that looked like some type of big maze. Rick and I jokingly called it the labyrinth. Venturing around with our headlamps for almost an hour down there, we finally stumbled upon a concrete wall with a big orange door. This is the part where it becomes slightly confusing. While I was trying to find a way into the door, Rick caught a glimpse of someone walking with a flashlight. We thought it was another urbex group. We had never happened upon another urbex group during our adventures, and Rick was excited to go meet them. He mentioned that he would be right back, and dropped his pack beside me as I struggled with the door. I heard him call out occasionally to them as he got closer, so they wouldn't be scared. Rick had gotten well out of my sight, and had been gone for a few minutes, when I heard a slight tinking sound, and was hit with a taser, making me fall completely to the ground, in excruciating pain. While the taser shut off, I rolled the ground just long enough to get a knee shoved in my back, and a hand on the back of my head, pushing my face into the dirt floor. I remember feeling a slight pinch in my left arm, but was quickly out of it. I'm assuming I was given some type of sedative or something. Again, I can't be clear on these events that followed, as I can only piece it together. I remember awakening, sitting in a chair in an interrogation room with my hands bound and tied beneath the chair. It seemed like one main guy came in, multiple times asking me different things, but I can't recollect what any of it was. I'm assuming I went back out at some point, because the next thing I remember was waking up in a 4-foot by 8-foot room, which became my home for the next several years. I was imprisoned here with only about 4 other guys, from what I can remember. However, we rarely saw each other. I was fed 2 meals a day through the food door in my room. The only times I ever left that room was when I was brought to different areas for questioning or different attempts to subject me to weird trials. I don't consider myself the smartest person alive, but I picked up on the fact that they were trying to brainwash me and have me believe facts that never happened. The questioning that would happen from time to time would be to see my progress of memory. Since I had picked up on the brainwashing attempts, I quickly began acting like these things that they were telling me were the real things, and that's how it was, and that's how I remembered. The same subjectivity went on for some lengths of time, until it was finally stopped, and I almost never left my cell. My muscles began to grow weak, and my hope grew dim. I was convinced that I was going to die here. I was given nothing to help me pass the time. I would often save food to play with for my entertainment value. Pretzels were the best because they didn't expire, and I acted like they were Lincoln Logs from my childhood. Another curious event was the blanket was completely sewn to the bed, except for the top and a tiny portion to fold back on one side. I'm assuming it was to keep me from committing suicide, because trust me, I understand how that would occur to someone in those types of circumstances. One day, it was over, just as it had begun. It was all completely over. One day, instead of waking up in my cell, I woke up sitting on a bench outside of Atlanta airport with a bus ticket in my hand and the clothes I had on originally, but now were just fairly baggy thanks to not eating well for the last few years. The bus took me home and only left me with heartbreak. My grandmother, who had lived with us, had passed away. Fortunately, a neighbor that knew her knew where she was buried, and I was able to visit her. I went to my sister's house to get some comfort and to be reunited, but she had moved out years ago according to the current homeowner. I've searched for my sister for a couple of years now, but never been fortunate to find her. Lastly, I went to Rick's house. Rick's son Jason answered the door when I went there. Unfortunately, Rick, he had never returned home. Rick's wife had apparently gone crazy and had just been committed to a full-time nursing home, or a complete ward, I'm unsure. Jason was very reluctant to talk to me because he was only 7 when his dad left. Jason was now 19 and had saved up enough money to buy the house that he grew up in. Unfortunately, Jason didn't really remember me at all. He wouldn't tell me where his mother was and called me a liar and slammed the door in my face when I talked to him about his dad. I've mostly wandered around for the last couple of years, just looking for a place to call home. I frequent coffee shops just to use the internet and search for my sister or post this. But I've never found comfort and never returned to my friendly, joyful personality. I, 25 male, am into urbex. It's something I often do alone, and during the day, typically early dawn, and this story reaffirmed that decision for me. So, one night I was out drinking with some buddies, and my hobby came up later in the night. The place we were at was starting to die down, so they asked me if there were any cool nearby places that we could go to. First place that popped into my head is an old abandoned factory that was in the woods, probably about 5 to 10 minutes of a drive away. So we went. Now I don't quite remember the path to get there. You have to leave the trail at some point. There was a cloud cover, so visibility was super low, and one of them is pretty unathletic thanks to diabetes. So, I had them stay on the trail as I fumbled around in the dark to make sure that we were going in the right direction. When I finally got back, they asked how far I went out, because they heard something walk by parallel to the trail. I shook it off and dismissed it as a stray dog or something, and led them into the woods until we hit the fence. I then started leading them along the fence to the hole that somebody cut out forever ago. When we're getting closer, I heard footsteps that weren't from ours, maybe 15 feet to the right, same side of the fence, and I stopped dead in my tracks. At that moment, my entire body was screaming at me to run, and the only thing that went through my head at that moment was, those were human. I turned back to my friends, and judging by their looks, their faces, and everything else, they heard it too. I told my friend we should skip this for the night and head back. They quickly agreed and started heading back to the trail, as I stayed behind to make sure whoever was there didn't follow them. I'm definitely the first dead in horror movies I know. As I waited for them to get a little bit further away, I didn't hear or see anything move. And once I assumed that they were back on the trail, I took off running after them, and we quickly made it back to the car. Since then, I've chopped it up to maybe some homeless dude going to the same place to crash for the night. But it felt like there was something following us. And for whatever reason, they triggered my fight or flight super hard. Thanks for watching. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did and you do want to see more of these urban exploration videos, make sure to let me know down in the comment section. Make sure to like, comment, and if you're new to this channel, make sure to subscribe. We're doing nothing but growing. I've got a lot of content and a lot more coming, so just know that. There's going to be a lot more new topics coming this month, so I hope you're ready for it. If you haven't yet, and you would like to, make sure to check out the members only section, where I post bloopers, extra content, stuff like that. But other than that, stay safe, stay scary, and I'll see you in the next one. Imagine being locked up for years, and then not even knowing what you did. Wow. That's insane. But yeah. Okay, bye.